Well, hello, and welcome back to that thing we like to call Curlis Mania, where we talk all things pop, rock, and prog. And man, it's a special day today because I'm so happy to have this gentleman back on the channel, Mr. Tim Durling from Tim's Vinyl Confessions. Tim, how are you?
I'm really good, Tom. Thanks for having me on, and I've been looking forward to having this discussion with you.
Yes, absolutely. No, and you know what? I have to say that Tim writes books, if you're not aware of it, and his recent book is on the legendary band Fleetwood Mac. And here it is, The Sound That Haunts You. And it is I've read it. I'll tell you, I couldn't put it down. It's if you're a fan of Fleetwood Mac, it just flows very nicely, very easily. It goes through, and what's my favorite thing, which is just albums, just talking about the records. That's like my favorite the format. I love that.
Oh, thank you.
And it's just one album after another in order, which is like that's what I love. That's my jam. So really enjoyed this book and The Sound That Haunts You. And that's what is that? That's from Silver Springs, is that right?
Yeah, it's a play on the sound of my voice that haunts you. I wanted something that was dramatic and something to catch people's attention. But I like playing off of album titles or song titles or lyrics. So I thought once I stumbled upon that, I was like, that's the title.
Yes. Yes. Yep, absolutely. And a really good book. And he also did one on Kansas that's also highly recommended. And
Thank you.
it's what is it? Let the something be your
Let It
guide.
Be Your Guide,
Yes.
which is from the song On the Other Side.
Yes, there we
You
go.
want something that makes sense because it's a
Mhm.
listener's guide. So, oh, well, let it be your guide. Yeah, that works.
Yeah,
The diehards will get it.
yeah, absolutely. Monolith, right? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep. So yeah, so this is a great book, and so it of course, Tim, I was like, Tim, I'd love to get you back on the channel, and he said, well, let's talk about the book. Let's talk about Fleetwood Mac. And so I said, absolutely. I've been wanting to do some Fleetwood Mac content, so that's perfect. And then we thought, Fleetwood Mac is such a long and storied career, so many different eras and lineups, and so it's just like, okay, let's break this thing up. We can't do this in one episode. It'd be like 4 hours. So, like we said, let's start with the Peter Green era, and maybe we'll throw in Kiln House too, because we were just discussing this before we hit record. It's like Kiln House is kind of a sort of like a one-off.
It's kind of an outlier. Yeah, it kind of doesn't belong to any one era, but if it belongs to anything, it belongs, I think, to the Peter Green era of the band. It makes more sense
Yeah.
to talk about it there because yeah, once we get into, the Bob Welsh era, it's kind of moving forward into the 70s, whereas Kiln House feels very retro to me.
Yes. Yes, I agree. I agree. It's still got that kind of that sound, you
Yeah.
know. So yeah, I started I just to give you a little bit of my journey. I started out of course I knew Fleetwood Mac from Rumors. I mean, Rumors and Tusk and Mirage, and and actually I knew the self-titled record from 75 as well. So that's kind of how I started in the Buckingham era. And
Yeah.
then I always heard about this, Fleetwood Mac started as a blues band,
Yep.
the British blues boom thing, and run by a guy called Peter Green, and he was sort of Peter Green was the guy. And it's like, what? Well, your curiosity gets piqued. So I found this in the record store. This was like a
Oh yeah.
compilation.
Yep.
Yeah. And I started with this sort of greatest hits compilation, and I was hooked. I got in this and I went, oh, this is great. Because I'd heard Oh Well. I think that was the only song from
Yeah.
Peter Green I knew, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
So how about you? How did you get started on Fleetwood Mac?
So Fleetwood Mac is an interesting case. I mean, I was born in 1974, so you'd think that I would have been, growing up listening to AM radio. You'd think I'd have been ground zero for hearing, the rumors and the self-titled stuff, but I really wasn't. Nobody in my family was must have been into Fleetwood Mac. I mean, I know that album sold, to the point where it was practically a household item, but it just
Yes.
that wasn't the case with me. Um, when I first really started paying attention to popular music, I was about 10 years old when I started listening to the top 40 radio and the countdowns. So I was more familiar with Stevie Nicks as a solo artist
Yes, that
um,
makes sense. Yeah. Yep.
until Tango and the Night came out. When Tango and the Night came out, then it was like, okay, Fleetwood Mac were then a current band sort of on my radar, even though they weren't really the type of band that I liked. They were just sort of one of those bands that was on the radio. So I was aware of them, from sort of that period on. And yeah, the learning about the Peter Green era, I think, is different. It's very different depending on what side of the pond you're on, because in the
Right.
UK, you know, anybody that grew up in the late 60s listening to, rock music, that Peter Green era, that's Fleetwood Mac.
Yes. Yeah.
Everything else is just that pop nonsense. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like I'm generalizing, but
No,
that's
you're
the
right. Yeah.
that's the real Fleetwood Mac, right? But to most of the world, it was more of sidebar, oh, well, that, yeah, they started like that. I did not know anything about the pre 1975 Fleetwood Mac. I couldn't tell you what their albums were called. Like, I would have had no idea that Rumors was the 11th Fleetwood Mac album, which is
Right.
insane.
Right.
But in the late 80s, a lot of myself and a lot of other, my friends our age, we got into Aerosmith because Aerosmith made such a huge comeback.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so, because of that timeline, they were the first band that I was actively listening to that put out a box set. See, to me, box sets were for old, music that had been around since the 50s
Sure.
and 60s.
Yeah.
So, Pandora's Box, that was a three
Right.
disc
Yep.
set that came out but from Sony in 1991. And so it came out and I had to have it. I bought it. And on the first disc of Pandora's Box, there's a song called Rattlesnake Shake. And I'm reading the liner notes, written by someone named Peter Green, didn't mean anything to me. And then I read that it's a Fleetwood Mac song. I'm like, that's a
Fleetwood
Fleetwood
Mac.
Mac
Yeah.
song. Like,
Right.
that doesn't sound anything like what I know
That
Fleetwood
doesn't sound like
Mac.
Big Love.
No, it doesn't. Yeah, that doesn't sound anything like Go Your Own Way
Yeah.
or anything like that.
Right.
So I'm like, that's really weird. I'm like, who's Peter Green?
Yeah.
And in the next few years, I started to get into more 70s bands. That's when I got into Kansas. That's when I got into Queen. That's when
Right.
I got into Led Zeppelin. And when you get into Led Zeppelin and you start reading about them, you inevitably read about the British blues boom,
Yes.
John Mayall and the Blues Breakers.
Yep.
You read about Fleetwood Mac and Peter Green.
Right.
You read about the song called "Oh Well" and what an influence it was.
Right.
So obviously I knew there, okay, well, there's a lot more to this group. But again, they weren't really a group that I was into, but it just expanded. The lens opened up a little bit wider. Um, Fast forward to 2013. That's when my wife and I got together. And Fleetwood Mac were one of her favorite bands. They're one of her mother's favorite bands. So she listened to Fleetwood Mac all the time. And so
Right.
I started for the first time hearing some of those album tracks from the Buckingham Nicks era. Like,
Right.
one that
Right.
really caught me was Never Going Back Again,
Oh,
because I was like, man, the guitar playing is incredible. Like,
yeah.
Lindsey Buckingham is an incredible guitar player. And then I'd heard The Chain, and I'd heard The Chain because of a fairly obscure Canadian metal band from the 80s called Kickaxe, who put out three albums in the 80s. And on their third album, they covered The Chain. I covered it really well. And I remember thinking, wow, that's that's heavier than I would have thought. And then I heard the Fleetwood Mac original, and I thought, that's still got obviously the guitars aren't distorted and all of that, but there's still a heaviness to it. It was still
Yes.
cool, right?
Right. So
So
good.
I knew they weren't just a pop band.
Right.
So, but doing some serious listening, I was like, okay, you know what? I think I understand why this band is so beloved by people.
Hmm.
They wrote really, really, really good songs.
Yeah.
They weren't just throwaway pop songs. These were really smart, intelligent lyrics and arrangements. And so I get it. I was starting to get it. And the thing is, to toot my own horn, I kind of wish there'd been a book like this back then,
Right.
because
Right.
as you said, it is such a vast catalog, not only in terms of numbers of different albums, all the compilations, some of which have songs on them that aren't available anywhere else, or you got to know which ones to get,
Right. Right.
and varied in terms of what they sound like, the personnel on them, like complete wholesale shifts in sound. I can't think of another band that's changed quite as much as Fleetwood Mac. And so it's hard to know where to start. And I'm a completist. If I get into a band, I usually don't just get one or two. So I
Right.
thought when it came time to, put this book together, I wanted to write a book where somebody that maybe had the self-titled and Rumors or The Dance or maybe the greatest hits from 88, but they were curious. Well, what else is there? What songs are on what albums? This is it. This is a from a relative latecomer to this band himself, me, going through all of these albums saying, okay, well, here's the songs on them. Here's what I think of them. And, here's kind of how they did on the charts. This is what they look like. And so, yeah, that's why instead of just calling it a listener's guide, a lot of my albums or a lot of my books are a listener's guide. I call this a beginner's companion because it's slightly different. This is with a new fan in mind. Diehard fans, I still think you'll enjoy this book to have all of that information in one place. Plus,
Yes.
there's another section that I had fun putting together that's a little bit different. But if someone's just got a couple of things, they get a couple of compilations, but they want to know more.
Mhm.
I think, with a couple of exceptions, I've covered just about every officially released song that Fleetwood Mac ever put out,
Right.
uh,
Right.
which was not easy.
No, it's a
But
lot.
yeah, that's how Fleetwood Mac sort of came up onto my radar. So I'm very much a late bloomer,
Mhm.
but I find that it's cool because I get to hear stuff that hasn't been worn thin in my mind because I've heard them so often.
Right.
When I first listened to Rumors in its entirety, I probably heard about half of it. But some
Mhm.
of those songs were brand new to me 12 years ago. So
Right.
that's, uh, so some of those big albums, just almost by osmosis, you just hear them. But
Yeah.
a lot of these songs were just, no, I've never heard this before. And then I would start listening to it again. And yeah, it kind of led into doing this book, I guess, whether
Yeah.
I knew it or not.
Yeah, no, it's great, and it's I love we talk about discovering new bands and discovering new old bands, right? I mean, it
Oh,
happens all
this
the time,
there's so many bands that passed me by that I think, someday I'm gonna really concentrate and really go back. And one band that I keep hearing about all the time, given everything else that I like, is the band Saga, which is a
Yes.
Canadian band, and I like some of their songs that I've heard. I've never dove into their albums. Maybe someday, but again, that's a huge catalog, right? So yeah,
Yeah.
there's stuff that new stuff is great, but if you haven't heard it, it's new to you.
Right, absolutely, and it's kind of exciting when you, I've always heard people say, "Well, I'm jealous of you if you don't know that band, you're to discover this
Oh
treasure trove of music," you know?
yeah, I always think like yeah, when somebody says, "Man, this is really good," I'm like, I can't tell you how jealous I am that you're hearing this for the first time
Right.
because there's just that one moment when something catches your ear and you're like, I'll be listening to this song the rest of my life.
Yeah. Oh,
And
for sure.
I'll never get tired of it. So yeah. And
Yeah.
there are a lot of those in this catalog. There are a lot of those songs. And there are a lot of songs that I'd heard very much in passing, but never really paid attention to. When you listen to it, especially if you listen to it with a good pair of headphones, you're like, wow, there's so much brilliant production stuff going on here. It's stuff that I'd never noticed just listening off the radio.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of very Fleetwood Mac-ish things that happen, and like you said, production-wise, it's
Yeah.
interesting. It's like there are times where I'm a musician and we'll be playing something and go, "Oh, like I want it to sound kind of like the self-titled Fleetwood Mac," and they had a sound. They had this like very dry sound that worked.
Yeah. It's a sound that might not look good on paper,
Right, right.
but it sounds perfect when they do it. And then the decisions that are made, like for example, um, secondhand news, the opening track off Rumors. Well, when that starts, that's Mick Fleetwood is not playing drums. He's tapping on a chair, on a leather chair, because it sounded better.
I didn't know that. There you go. I
Yeah,
just learned something today.
just little things like that,
Okay.
right? And whatever it takes to get a good sound.
Right.
So yeah, it is that very, very compressed sound, but it's not dead sounding. It comes alive
No, it
with the
works.
personalities and the group and the melodies and I've said this many times, like Lindsey Buckingham to me is like the thinking man's guitar hero.
Right.
He's not a flashy guy, but his solos are always just the right thing at the right time, and the tones he chooses. And yeah, boy, a lot of what makes those albums from his era really special. He's not just a singer and guitar player and a songwriter, but he's a producer, and he's he's kind of one of those guys that can see 6 steps ahead. And
Yes.
so the
Yes.
the sort of the magic dust sprinkled on it, and you really hear that after he left.
No, absolutely, yes,
Yeah.
yes, for sure, and it's interesting because he's like I always see he's like a Jimmy Page where he of Fleetwood Mac where he's got a hand in the production and the
Yeah.
arrangements and the yeah.
He's like a cross between like Jimmy Page and Brian Wilson. I mean,
Yes, perfect,
he's
yeah,
like he's the
right,
overseer, right? And
right.
even with other people's songs, he finds things in them to take an okay song and make it good, and take a good song and make it great.
Yes, that totally, there's so many moments in the Fleetwood Mac
Yeah.
catalog like that with the again, when with the Buckingham era especially where you're like, "Man, this song sounds kinda ordinary," but you could tell that he took it and he's like, "We could do this, we could do that, we could do" and the backing vocals come in, and then there's the thing, and it's like, "Oh
That's
my god, this is so cool now," you know?
that's where when you
Yeah.
get that's really where it's really good value for money buying the deluxe versions of some of these. When you hear the original takes of the songs, you can hear what they are,
Mhm.
but they're not ready yet. They haven't
Not
been
there
cooked.
yet.
They haven't got all the seasonings yet.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. Well, we are here, we're gonna start with the Peter Green era. So
Yeah.
we're gonna be talking about the British, blues boom
Yeah.
of the late, mid to late 1960s in the UK, in England, in London particularly. Tim already mentioned, I mean, it kind of started with, I mean, one of the big huge bands in the UK at the time was the Blues Breakers, John
Yeah.
Mayall, the Blues Breakers, where Eric Clapton got his start,
Yeah.
and and this was just this blues thing was taking over, and it's like blues was known to be an American thing with African American guys from
Yeah.
the older, and all of a sudden these young white kids from England are doing it,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, it's interesting how, they discovered this old like almost traditional American music. And I mean, the blues boom happened, heavy metal happened, you
Yeah.
know,
Yep.
because
Yep.
Jimmy Page and like Tony Iommi and Richie
Sure.
Blackmore, they were all, influenced by this stuff. And
Right.
it's really something like, and I'm not sure how it even, you know what I mean? Like, it's not the day of information back then. How did it even get across there? Like, it's just interesting how it all started. But yeah, John, you take John Mayall and the Blues Breakers, also the Yardbirds. I
Yeah,
mean,
Yardbirds, right. Yep.
breeding ground for talent that's, Jeff Beck and Jimmy Page and Eric Clapton and a lot of the early Fleetwood Mac guys were in the Blues Breakers. John
Right.
McVie, and you know what I
Yes.
mean? Like, it's
It
so
was like the farm team for all these bands, you know?
yeah, I think Mick Taylor.
Yes, Mick Taylor,
Mick
exactly.
Taylor was,
Yeah.
yeah, so
Yep.
so it's pretty crazy. And I mean, when the Rolling Stones first started, first their first few albums, they were a lot of blues covers.
Oh, for sure, for sure.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, they were loving this stuff, which subsequently, and then it's almost like they got it from America, and
Mhm.
then they exported it back to America
Right,
in a
right.
different form. Now, the thing is with Fleetwood Mac, the difference between them and the Yardbirds and eventually Led Zeppelin and the Jeff Beck group and then Led Zeppelin is that Peter Green's Fleetwood Mac is really only a UK thing. The albums were released in some form or another all over the world, but they weren't. I mean, they were quite successful and very well known in the UK and in other parts of Europe. They had several hit singles,
Right,
um, but that wasn't the case in the US. Obviously, there were some people listening. Joe Perry, for one,
right,
was a
right.
huge fan. So obviously, they must have found them in the import section. So it's really fascinating when you get to hear. 'Kay, this is part of where that all comes from.
Yeah, yeah, like, for example, their debut, I don't think this was found easily in the United States, right? This was
No,
this was
no,
something that, I found it took me a while to find this record at a decent price, honestly.
at this point, I don't. That's one I don't have on vinyl yet, but I'll show you what I do have.
Okay.
For some reason, I've got this carousel, this old cassette carousel out here, and I've got my Fleetwood. I'm working on my Fleetwood Mac collection.
Sure,
Now,
sure.
now this
Oh, nice, okay.
this is what I in my Sammy Hagar book refer to as a truck stop tape.
Yeah.
These are these are
So
the
true.
tapes. Yeah, these are the tapes that would show up in the department stores that didn't even sell music. There'd be like a rack of them near the
Yes.
the front
Yep.
counter. So this has a copyright date of 1985 on it.
Wow, alright.
It just says Fleetwood Mac, and it's an abridged version of their debut album. It's only got 8 songs on it. There
Okay.
is absolutely no information on this. Uh, it doesn't say who's in the band. It doesn't say who wrote the songs. There's nothing on here to indicate anything. So it's for someone in 1985 who was like, "Oh, I've been waiting for a new Fleetwood Mac album. What's this? I've never seen this before." And they put it on, and the first thing they hear is Jeremy Spencer wailing out "My Heart Beat Like a Hammer." Like, this isn't Fleetwood Mac.
Yeah,
Well, it is.
it
A
is.
little explanation. There was no explanation for the stuff. You had to find out the hard way. So I just think it's interesting. But that was something that I used to see, and I'd be like, even the cover, I was like, that doesn't look like, something's weird. So that
Yeah, you're
maybe
like,
that was an early clue from, because I always used to dig through those,
mhm.
anywhere that had a music section. So then it kind of made more sense once I found out, okay, well, that's actually from 1968. And yes, it's Fleetwood Mac, but it's, the people out front and the people singing and writing are totally different. Um, so yeah, that first album, I mean, that's pretty traditional blues, a lot of it.
Oh, absolutely. It's mostly traditional, and to your point, imagine buying that cassette in 1985, like you said, not knowing anything and going, "What
Yeah,
is this?"
the last thing you heard from Fleetwood Mac would have been the Mirage album,
Right, right,
which follows, along with not so much Tusk, but Rumors and the self-titled, very polished, very, soft rock, California, whatever.
right.
And then you hear dun, 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 and you're like, did I just buy a George Thorogood album? Like,
Yeah, right.
what is going on? I don't understand. The vocals would be like totally different. It's funny to think about, but at the same time, it probably turned people off
Right.
of exploring any further. Like, well, this is awful. I don't know what this is, but I
I
don't like it.
I don't wanna I don't
It's
yeah,
just so different, right? It's
right.
just it's a completely, it's weird, how different it is, and it's whiplash to go way back to that. If
Mhm.
haven't been properly, well, by the way, don't expect anything that sounds, reconfigure your expectations of what you think a Fleetwood Mac sounds like.
Yeah,
So.
yeah, absolutely, but I really enjoy this record. I mean, for what it is, once you realize what it is, and it's very traditional, like you said, sticking to the sort of traditional blues structures, and a lot of the songs do start with that slide.
Oh,
It's
yeah, they've all got the blues turnarounds and and I'll be completely honest, and I have to be honest. I'm not a blues aficionado myself. I have tremendous respect for blues as a genre because I know that any music I've ever loved wouldn't exist without the blues.
right,
But the part that I found, a little bit taxing when I was doing this was listening to the first couple of albums because honestly, after a while, the songs start to sound the same to me,
it's a little repetitive. Yeah, yeah,
to the
yeah,
point where I think it's the first. No, I actually think it's the second album. But there's a song that's like a Spencer original, and then there's a cover.
right,
And I didn't realize the song changed. I thought
yeah,
it was the same
yeah,
song.
yeah,
So, yeah, you really got to have those fine-tuned ears. Now, the one thing that you do get that I do appreciate and I do hear is how talented this band was, and a lot of these guys were really young. I
yeah.
mean,
Think about how old they were. Right,
barely 20, if that.
right,
Danny Kerwin was like 17, I think,
right,
when so immensely talented. And I Jeremy Spencer he sang like a 50-year-old blues man from the American South. He didn't sing like a skinny
right.
UK teenager. You know what I mean? So
Yes.
he had this voice that was older than, coming out of, it didn't look right. It looked like he was, a ventriloquist. Somebody else was singing in the background. He's lip syncing.
Right,
So,
and he did a lot of
uh,
the yeah,
yeah,
he does a
yeah.
lot of
Oh
that. "Oh,
yeah, like
yeah."
yeah, a lot of
Yeah,
that. A lot of the
right.
slide guitar was
Yep,
Jeremy Spencer. Peter Green, I thought had the more pleasing voice to listen to.
I
He just
agree.
had a kind of a better suited for singing lead vocals. Like, I've heard this said a lot of times. Like, sometimes you get a blues guitarist that sings, but they aren't really a singer. They're
Right.
just singing because somebody has to. But then sometimes you'll get someone who, no, he's a good singer, you
Yeah,
know, and
yeah.
that's how I
He
would
was a good
classify
singer.
Peter Green, and
Yeah,
an
right.
interesting guy, and for all of his, issues that he had, within himself and substance abuse and whatever, he had this ability. He could just write memorable songs, and he would only like this is just the beginning, but very soon he would get so like he would develop into an amazingly talented and versatile songwriter.
Yes.
And
No, I
doesn't
agree.
get and he doesn't get mentioned with the pantheon of your UK guitar heroes, at least worldwide, the way that he should. But yet, if you talk to most of your favorite guitar heroes from that era and ask them who their favorite guitar players, inevitably you're going to hear Peter Green.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the fact that he took over for Eric Clapton and the Blues Breakers, I mean, just the fact that you had the confidence to do that,
Yeah,
and but he did it and he did it well, and people accepted him pretty quickly because he was so talented. And
yeah,
he had a different style. He's got that touch. There's something about Peter Green's touch and
yeah,
the sound. It's like, oh, it's him. And you're like, oh, that's so
yeah,
cool. And
yeah.
and he's not really that aggressive. I don't know how to describe it. Like he's not,
No, he's got this soft touch
yeah, yeah,
to his playing. That's that beautiful Les Paul tone.
right.
Um, and those are early albums like Mike Vernon, who was there, he produced them, but he also had their label Blue Horizon for the first couple.
Right.
He got a good sound out of them. It just sounds like a
Yeah.
band playing in a room,
Yeah. It's
but
almost
it's
like
good.
fly on the wall,
Yeah, it's
Right.
not, I think it holds up. I mean, yes, you can kind of tell it's from the late 60s, but it's not lacking for anything,
Right.
you know. Modern production would ruin these songs
Oh,
completely,
absolutely. And
you
it's
know.
kind of cool that you hear them like it's almost like they did it on purpose. You kind of hear them getting ready and they're tuning up a little bit like right
Yeah,
before the song. It's almost like they did it on purpose to show, hey, we're doing this live in the studio.
yeah,
You
yeah. Yeah, they're
uh,
not perfect. You can hear, places where it speeds up and slows down, but yeah, it's very real. It's very authentic.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So I enjoy the debut, and but to your point, by the time Mr. Wonderful comes around, it kind of starts feeling a little bit like oof, like they add horns, right? They got horns
Yeah.
on this record, and so that's a little bit different. But it's just more blues, and
It
it's like
sounds like, and I think it is true. I think a lot of those songs were all recorded very close to one another. I mean, we're only talking a matter of months, right, between
right,
albums.
right,
And
right.
yeah,
Yes, you got
and
to
Mr.
remember that.
Wonderful is also the first one where Mick decides to be the cover model. And
Yeah,
I have to say, and I've talked about this before, Pete Pardo is a mutual friend of ours, and Pete was good enough to do the foreword for my book. Um, but he did an episode, he and Martin Popoff, on bands with bad album covers, and I think Fleetwood Mac have some of the worst. For a good band, their
yeah,
album covers are not high art. Some of them are good, some of them are iconic, but some of them are like Mr. Wonderful,
yeah.
where like, would you really walk into a
You
store
think
and
this is a
say,
good
"Oh yeah,
cover? Yeah.
that's gonna leap right off, that's gonna leap right off the shelves," especially if you fold it out completely
Yes,
and you
yes.
find out he's like Adam, he's just like
Naked.
covered by
Yeah,
leaves, yeah, and he had
yeah.
no problem dropping trowel for the camera. We will find out.
Yeah, well, it's one of those where too. It's one of those you kind of feel like they thought it was a funny at the time. They thought it's like an in joke, like, "Oh, this is hilarious," and then you go, "No, this is a bad
Well,
cover."
then, especially, yeah, think about a newer fan going back and going, just looking like that's really weird.
Yeah,
And even that first album cover, I mean, like a dog in a back alley sniffing at garbage cans. It's like, it's not really, I don't know. That kind of makes more sense. It kind of fits that sort of low down blues feel. But that
right.
Mr. Wonderful is just, I don't know, shock value.
No,
And keeping with that, so that's the first time that an album wasn't released in North America.
right.
Instead, what we got was a compilation called English Rose, which I think has an almost scarier cover. I don't know if I've got a picture of it here or not because I only talked about the main albums, but that's basically Mick in drag and sort of a close up of his face going
Oh, right.
like
Yes, yes. I know
making
what
this
yes,
face. Yeah.
right.
So some of the songs are from Mr. Wonderful. Some of them would end up on the next album.
So
This
confusing. So
this
confusing.
period, this
Right.
was the hardest part for me,
Yeah.
making sense of the 1967 to 1969 period
Yes.
and catching all the songs. That's
Right.
the part I had the hardest. That's the part that was the biggest struggle. Once I got that out of the way, I was pretty smooth sailing.
Yeah. Now I
But
think
yeah,
this came out in the UK, right? This is another
yeah.
comp.
See, so the Pious Bird of Good Omen, yes,
It's another
which
comp.
yeah, so that's similar to English Rose, but not exactly the same. It's very, very
Just to
confusing. I
confuse fans a little bit
Yeah,
more.
I outline it here, basically what's missing and what's not. There's the section after I go through each of the albums, there's a section called Other Songs.
Okay.
And so that's what's going on there. As a matter of fact, yeah, no, there's some crossover, but they're not exactly the same. And also, if I was a kid and walked into a record store and saw that album cover, I'd be scared. There was something
Yeah,
creepy about it.
it's another creepy. This seems like a Black Sabbath
And it's
cover.
like, yeah, is that the same woman that's on the first Black Sabbath
It seems like
album?
it,
And
right? Seems
what
like
is
it.
she, why is she holding on to a, I mean, I hadn't studied Samuel Coleridge. I'm like, why is she holding a great big bird? I didn't know it was an
Happening.
albatross.
Yeah, exactly.
I was years before I had discovered the rhyme of the Ancient Mariner. And again, like you raised a good point. Oh, that's the pious bird of good omen. Yes, that's hilarious. If you get it. If not,
Right.
it's like, how do you even say that?
Yeah,
You know?
most fans it's right over their head. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, so yeah, so it's really confusing, but if you're a fan, you want it all and you
Oh yeah.
try to
And
get it all.
And they're also not only that, but also we're still in the 60s, which means we're still in an era where bands, it was just expected. Sometimes you would just put out singles that
Yes. Yep.
weren't attached to any album. And one of the biggest ones was the song Albatross,
Albatross, of course.
which is a
Right.
beautiful instrumental,
Right.
which was a number 1 hit in the UK. That song was so popular and so influential, it influenced the Beatles for crying
Yes,
out
it
loud.
did.
Because when they
Absolutely.
were
Yes.
recording Abbey Road and they were working on Sun King,
Yep.
George Harrison is quoted as saying, "Okay, for this part, let's be Fleetwood Mac doing Albatross."
Totally.
I mean,
To-
that's
How
if
how
you've influenced the Beatles
yeah.
and Led Zeppelin, how many
Yes.
bands can say that? And that's another thing because everybody knows what you're talking about. You say Fleetwood Mac influenced the Beatles. What? You know what
Yes.
I mean? Like when you don't realize how far back they go.
Yeah, and
So
that's what really I have to tell you, Tim, that's really what got me fired up to discover the early stuff was when I heard that Sun King was influenced by Fleetwood Mac. I was like, "What?" Like, oh, okay, I
yeah,
definitely have to figure all I have to get all of it, like
yeah. And so that's another thing. If you listen to Albatross, that's it's bluesy guitar licks, but it doesn't sound like a blues song.
no,
It's
it
just a
doesn't sound bluesy.
really, really nice instrumental
It's
piece
beautiful.
that's,
Really
yeah,
beautiful.
like absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
And I think that's a song that more people know. They don't know who it is or what it's called. They
Right.
recognize that melody.
Yep.
Um, and to me, at this point, when you get Danny Kerwin in the band, they're just going from strength to strength.
Oh God, yeah. Oh
Because
yeah.
it to me, and I know we're gonna get to it. It culminates in
Yeah.
my first favorite Fleetwood Mac album.
Yes. Yes. And that's I was just gonna jump into it and say,
Yeah,
what a you already said it, what a huge leap.
leaps and bounds,
Oh, when
then
they go
play
to this,
on.
this is
Yeah.
a fantastic record.
Oh yeah, it's still got some blues on it,
Holy moly.
so they didn't leave it behind.
Right,
But
right.
there's so much variety, and it's so good. And I want to show this off. I was glad to find this online. This is a really old cassette of
Oh,
Then
look at
Play
that.
On, and it's
Yeah,
one of those ones in the hard plastic case where the tape
right.
comes out like this. They only made these through 1975. I've got a few of these, but not too
Only
many.
Tim, he's got the stuff that you just like, wow, I haven't seen that in
Yeah.
forever.
So anyway, but Then Play On. Oh yeah, like
So good.
that is an amazingly good album.
Yeah.
And Danny Kerwin really starts to come into his
Oh,
own
yeah.
as almost, I would say, like he and Peter Green, I think, had very similar styles as far as songwriting,
Right.
and they're melodic. You know,
Super melodic.
this was showing that, hey, you know what, this band could really be a band that appeals to a wider audience.
Mm,
Um, no, I think Then Play On is just spectacular.
so
Um,
great.
but if you,
Love the picture in the inside too. So they look so
yeah, but now if you didn't get the original, or if you only got the original version of Then Play On, there's a couple of really important songs in the Fleetwood Mac catalog that you wouldn't hear.
right.
And those are Oh Well, parts 1 and 2,
Mhm.
and The Green Manalishi with the Two-Prong Crown.
Right. Right.
Those were singles by themselves, but they're on the reissue of Then Play On. And Oh Well, I think, is the most popular Peter Green Fleetwood Mac song by Fleetwood Mac. I think that's a song that
Right.
people will go, "Oh, I've heard that before. I
Yes.
just didn't know who it was, and I didn't know what it was called." Lots of people have covered it, but I
Right.
remember once I found out who it was, the first time I realized what it was when I heard when Jimmy Page and the Black Crowes put that live album out.
Mhm.
They do "Oh Well."
Oh, they do. Is that Live at the Greek?
Live at
Yeah.
the Greek. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I heard the
Yeah.
da down, da down, da down. And I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
that's what that is. I like that song. I just
Yeah.
never knew what it was. That
Right.
song was a huge influence on Led Zeppelin when they wrote Black Dog. Doesn't sound exactly like it, but it's the way it would stop and start
Stop
again and
start thing.
stop,
Yeah.
start.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. And and anybody that came of age with the late 70s and was, called themselves a metalhead in the 80s and like Judas Priest knows the Green Manalishi, but have
Yes.
they heard the original version? That 1969 recording is pretty darn heavy for
It's dark and
1969.
heavy.
It
Yeah.
could have been on a Sabbath album. I mean, it's
Yeah.
doomy, it's spooky,
It is spooky.
it's legitimately scary, especially if you listen to it with the headphones.
When it does that, "Da, da, 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 da," and then you
It's
can hear the "woo."
yeah, it's
So,
a classic
it's
metal riff. I
awesome.
mean,
Yeah.
they didn't have to do much to make that into a heavy metal song because it was kind of right there.
Yeah.
And another song that actually I think appeared on one of those comps that it is vital to talk about in this era is Black Magic Woman,
Of course. Right.
because
Yes.
I'll bet you to this day most people think Carlos Santana wrote that.
Of course. They do.
That was
They
a worldwide hit single for him, but it's a Fleetwood Mac song.
Yeah.
And I always tell people, look, if you listen to the original, the Fleetwood Mac version, it's not that different. It just doesn't have all of the Latin feel, but it's
Yes.
there. It's
It's all there.
recognizable.
Yeah.
And it's
Yep.
again another hit single from the pen of Peter Green, you know.
Yes.
And Oh Well actually was their very first song to crack the Billboard pop chart. It peaked at number 55.
Right. Right.
And it's I think it's the the next time that they had a song in the Billboard Top 100 was Over My Head.
Right.
So,
Right.
but
Yeah.
that opened a door,
Yeah.
that song. Unfortunately, the band splintered apart by the time that probably, like I
Yeah.
said, it's a very short window of time. And you also have to kind of have an understanding of what the individuals in this band were dealing with. Peter Green was, I think he was even without, the stories about the LSD trip and all of that, I think he was highly conflicted because he did not want to be a rock star.
He didn't like
He did
fame.
not,
Like
no, he just wanted to be as good as he could be. Yeah, he had a real problem. He really couldn't reconcile that within himself. So that's why he was sort of like in hiding for a lot of the years after Fleetwood Mac. And it's probably one of the reasons why he never really got his due. He didn't seek that fame.
right.
You know what
Right.
I mean? He never became like Clapton or Beck or Page, where people just you hear the last name and you know exactly who you're talking about. But
Yeah.
he didn't want that. Even it's the fans that say he should have been. He should have
Right.
just been revered as much as those other guitar players.
Yeah.
Um,
I think he
so
wanted respect. He wanted the respect from other musicians and everything, but I
yeah,
don't think when the fame really hit and he was on top of the pops and people were recognizing him and people are coming up to him, I don't think he liked any of that.
no. So the other thing that was confusing is like I wasn't really sure how to tackle this either from this time period. But there's the famous Chicago blues sessions.
Right. Right.
And
Yeah.
it's been issued several times under different names. And I refer in my book, I refer to another book because it sums it up better than I ever could, called Fleetwood Mac in Chicago by Jeff Lowenthal and Robert Schaffner. Because Jeff Lowenthal was a photographer and he photographed the band at Chess Studios when they were in that um, session in
Oh, okay. Okay,
1969.
gotcha.
And
Gotcha.
so they're coming over to play at Chess Studios where so many other blues heroes were from.
It's like
Fleetwood
ground
Mac come,
zero for them,
yeah.
right? Yeah.
Fleetwood, but
Right.
Fleetwood Mac were not an established group, and it didn't really mean that much to American fans. Oh, Fleetwood Mac are here. You know what
Right.
I mean? It just
Right.
wasn't
Yes.
the same thing.
Yes.
I had the pleasure of having Robert on my show, and I talked to him at length about
Oh,
that. So,
beautiful.
so if you're interested in that period, I would highly recommend if you can track down a copy of that book. I've got, let me see. This is one of the many covers that it has on it. So it just says Fleetwood Mac in Chicago, but it's
Yes.
been released under different, Blues Jam in Chicago, and It's two records. It's two CDs, so it's probably more like three records. And there's a lot of songs on there. Some of them are covers, some of them aren't.
Yep.
So yeah, there you go,
It's a
right
good book.
there.
Yep. Yep.
Um, and but one of the things that Robert was telling me, like a story that Jeff told him, was that Peter Green wanted to go jam at some nightclub in Chicago, and it was the south side of the Chicago, and I mean, he stood out like a sore thumb
Right.
walking into the club, and I think it was John McVie that pulled him aside and said, "You can't do you'll get
You're crazy. Yeah.
you'll get beaten up." You know,
Yeah.
he got on stage with his guitar and he won everybody over.
Oh, that's
You
so
know,
cool. I love that
yeah,
story. I never heard
yeah,
that.
yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, I would recommend that checking that book out and you know watching that episode because yeah, we get into that a lot. So it meant a lot to those guys to go and not only jam with where a lot of their heroes had recorded, but at this point, like a lot of those guys were still alive. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like some of them weren't, and that's something that when it comes to blues, I'm not sure when you talk about Muddy Waters or Robert Johnson or Elmore James or Willie Dixon. I'm like, oh yeah, but I know Robert Johnson died young, but you know what I mean? Like I'm not sure. So when I find it, oh well, they jammed with this guy, you know?
Right.
And then Willie Dixon, I mean, if you like Led Zeppelin, I mean, Willie Dixon wrote You Shook Me and oh, at least one other song that
Yeah,
they
what's the
did.
other one?
Bring It On Home, I
On
think.
Home. Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
think
Not
yeah.
always credited, but
Not credited, but yeah, exactly.
not always
According to the album,
credited,
it's
but
Page Plant.
that's right. Yeah, yeah. Some of those had to be amended after
Right.
suits were filed. But
Yeah.
anyway, so you get the idea. I mean, you can really see when you listen to some of this stuff. I can hear where it's not that big a step into that first Led Zeppelin album.
Right.
You
It's not.
know, like
Yeah.
Fleetwood. You know, other than the Green Man Alicia, I don't think Fleetwood Mac ever did anything that you could say pioneered metal. But
Right.
they definitely there's some hard rock there.
Influenced it. Yeah, they influenced. I mean,
Yeah,
like think about I just it blows my mind and how short of a period this was. And like you said, think about in a short time they did Oh Well, Black Magic Woman, Albatross, and
Green Man Alicia. I mean,
Annalishi. Those
yeah,
four songs are all Peter Green songs, and they're all
and
amazing.
and they're all completely different.
You know, and they're all different.
They're all
Exactly.
different than each other.
Yes.
It's fascinating, and I mean, and Danny Kerwin, he wrote
Danny Kerwin.
he
Yes.
wrote great songs,
Is it
and
Coming Your Way? Is that Danny Kerwin?
yeah, oh
Yeah.
yeah,
I
that's
love
and
that.
I
Love
love
that.
that. I love how that starts out with the percussion. Yeah, When You Say is almost a ballad. Um, like Crying,
Like Crying. Yes.
that's a
Yep.
great blues song.
I always walk away from this album singing that feel like crying.
Yeah,
It's just
yeah,
very hooky, you know.
great stuff.
Yeah. So
Um, and unfortunately, so yeah, and again on this album, well, actually starting with the second album, Christine Perfect, as was her maiden name at the time,
right.
is uncredited, but she played piano on everything from the second album onward.
Right.
It would
Right.
be a couple more years, but she was in a band called Chicken Shack, which was also part of that British blues boom. So, you know, she was right there in the thick of it. And I always found that interesting because I mean, here she was in the, you know, the ultimate boys club, right? And these guys
Right.
were, you know, doing what touring musicians would do, right?
Yeah.
But
She hung in there.
she hung in there and she married John, and yeah, and so yeah, I mean, it was such a short-lived period, and I've often wondered because then Play On was such a quantum leap forward
Yes.
after the first two albums and that batch of songs. If we could have had one more album
More.
with
One
Peter
more.
Green,
Yeah.
what would it, you know, I bet it would have been amazing.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, Peter Green would sort of come in and out of the orbit over the years. He would make the occasional guest appearance. You know, there's claims that he plays on a song on Tusk, and then there's other
Yeah.
people that say no, he actually didn't. And um,
Right.
what I find really interesting about Peter Green, who passed away just well about 5.5 years ago, is that gold Les Paul that he played that ended up in the possession of Gary Moore for a
Okay.
time,
Right.
who was just an acolyte of Peter Green. He actually
Like
did an album, I think, in '95 called Blues for Greenie, and it was all Peter Green songs.
okay. Okay.
Um, but I think, and then the person that owns it now and got to be buddies with Peter Green was Kirk Hammett from Metallica.
Oh, nice.
And when
Okay.
Mick Fleetwood organized the Peter Green tribute concert, Kirk was there playing that guitar, doing. They did at least the Green Manalishi, and I don't know if Steven Tyler was singing that one or not, but it's a cool concert what I've
Cool.
seen of
Yeah.
it. But
Yeah. Yeah.
so that just shows you the range of influence
Yeah.
that this band would have had. But yeah, yeah, then play on is
It's
if somebody
phenomenal.
said, yeah, I want to, other than getting a compilation of the early stuff, if you want to get one of the albums, I would definitely start with Then Play On
Yeah.
because you've got the blues on there, but there's so much more variety. And
Yes.
yeah, I would definitely start with Then Play On. I just find it a very listenable album from start to finish.
Oh,
It's well sequenced and it's just got so much variety on it. And you know, it's changing. They're already changing.
changing.
Three
Yes.
albums in, they're
Exactly.
morphing into something else. We just don't know what it would have ultimately been with
Right.
Peter Green at the helm.
That is one of the big what ifs, Tim. I agree with you that
Yeah.
the one more with Peter like at full power. I just wonder what that would have been like.
Yeah.
This is so good. Then play on so great, and but we unfortunately it didn't happen. I mean, who knows? There's a long story about you can look into it, but you know who knows what happened to him. But I know that he was very adverse to fame. He didn't like being famous. He started talking about giving his money away.
Yeah. And he wanted the rest of them to do the same. And,
Yeah.
like most people, like, we
What are
worked
you
so
talking about?
hard to get here. That's
Yeah.
it. It
Right.
just, yeah, and it's a shame, And also, I think he was ripped off because if their original manager, Clifford Adams, if you
Right.
look at some of the songwriting credits, I think all of Then Play On, he's got songwriting credits with anything Peter wrote. He didn't write.
So annoying. That is so, oh my God.
Yeah.
That's annoying.
I mean,
Wow.
this is the man that would later orchestrate what would come to be known as the fake Fleetwood Mac, but that's a whole other story.
Another story. Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, and he just unfortunately, and then who knows if role drugs played in it. There was this incident in Munich where apparently he took, a really huge hit of bad LSD or something. Who knows? And
Yeah.
they said he was never quite the same after that.
Well,
Uh,
it's funny if you read about, well, it's not funny, but it's interesting. If you read about Peter Green and you read about Jeremy Spencer and you read about Danny Kerwin, all three of those guys, I think it just goes back to nobody talked about mental illness back then.
right, right,
And
right.
I think all of these guys needed some form of help in that way,
Yeah,
and didn't get it. And
yeah,
it's and Danny and Danny Kerwin ended up homeless and like it
yeah.
was just
So sad.
really
Yeah,
sad story. Yeah, he
yeah.
was so talented.
Jeremy Spencer went to a commune or
Well, he
something.
joined. Yeah, he left. He joined this cult called the Children of God, and he's now he's still alive,
Right,
I think he's
right,
still associated with this. I'm really not sure, but
right, right,
but yeah, they all ended up in these. It's interesting because you had Mick Fleetwood and John McVie that weathered that particular storm, but I don't know. I mean, maybe they had a more steady home base. I have no idea, but and that's something that I've said. We're only just getting started with this, but I mean, one thing I wanted to talk about in the book was the music. I didn't want to get into the drama
right,
and
right,
and the stories.
right,
They all, you know, inevitably, what's going on in their lives would end up in their songs.
right, right. Yeah.
But I always say this, like, most people, most average people have a general understanding of the Buckingham Nicks and that whole thing,
Yes.
John and
Right.
Christine McVie. They kind of know, at least an abridged version of that story. There was all kinds of drama in Fleetwood Mac long before those two
Way
came
before
along,
that.
way
Exactly.
before that. But I
Right.
mean, as far as
Right.
Peter Green and Mick Fleetwood has said this, I can't believe I didn't. He said, I can't believe I didn't pick this up. But if the song "Man of the World," that's basically Peter Green in pain
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
singing out his pain. It's
Right.
really it's a beautiful song, but it's sad because
Yeah.
that wasn't just words that rhymed. That was coming from the heart.
Coming from his soul. Yeah.
That
So,
was another big song that wasn't on an album. It was just a
right.
single by
Yeah. That's
itself.
another single. Right.
And that's
Exactly.
another well-known song from that period.
That's why you have to get all the compilations because they get
You
all the songs, all those songs
the
that were singles. Right.
There's two things I'd recommend real quick. There's a box set that came out in the late 90s called the Complete Blue Horizon Sessions.
Okay.
1967 to 1969. That gives you the first album, Mr. Wonderful, Pious Bird of Good Omen, the two discs of the Blues Jam in Chicago, and then another CD that came out in 71 called The Original Fleetwood Mac. Um, that captures a lot of the stuff that was done then. And there's a single disc version of that that Sony put out in 2002 called The Very Best of Peter Green's Fleetwood Mac. That's a really good starter too, because if
Right.
you look at that, you'll see a lot of titles you recognize. So that's a good, easier way into it,
Yep.
and then go further and get the full albums.
Yep. So yeah, no, absolutely. And so Fleetwood Mac continued though. I mean, to your point, Mick Fleetwood seemed determined that I'm going to keep this band together. We're
You
going to keep,
know,
you
yeah,
know,
Mick, that's his life's work, right? And he, through thick and thin, against all odds, kept his band together.
yep,
When it seemed like they were, you know, most other bands would have, fallen apart and they would all gone done their own thing.
mhm.
Yeah, he kept them together, and it
Tim, are you there?
I froze up there for a
Oh, there you go.
second, Tom.
Now you're back. You're
Yeah.
back. Yeah.
I think it speaks to how different record labels viewed signing groups back then.
Right.
They were willing to give them time
Yeah.
to become successful. And if they hadn't
Exactly.
made it till but after
Exactly.
6 albums, they'd drop them. But they actually only signed with Reprise Warner in 1969 with Then Play On.
Right.
But they'd put out an album a year, sometimes two albums a year, to very little success. But
Right.
they were allowed to keep doing it. And eventually, of course, they made the label big bucks.
Yes.
But certainly at this
They were
point in
scraping
time,
by for years.
it didn't look like it.
Yeah. Right.
This did not look like the makings of a group that would become household names.
Yeah, they were just scraping by and making money, like, by
Yeah,
like that much.
yeah. They
Uh,
must have been just making just enough return
just
to make
enough.
it
Yeah.
worthwhile
Do
for to do.
another
Okay,
album.
we'll let you do
Yeah.
another album. Yeah,
Exactly. It's just,
yeah,
I think that's the way they survived for a lot of years. And
yeah.
so the album that we're talking about next is Kiln House, which basically, I mean, this album is surprisingly good for me. I considering what the situation of the band at this
Yeah.
point,
This
you
is
know.
an old cassette, and actually that artwork is by Christine.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah, she did that artwork. It's funny. My wife said it's interesting because it reminds her of anime,
Yeah,
like
it kind
Japanese
of does.
anime now. Here we are in 1970. But yeah, Peter Green's gone, and actually Christine was asked to become a member of the band like days before they went out on tour to support this album. So this is the last album where she's not a full band member.
Right.
So yeah, you had Jeremy Spencer and Danny Kerwin were
Where the
you
two
know
heads kind
were
of lead.
the two,
Yeah.
yeah, the two songwriters, guitar players, and singers on this album. I find this album a very strange sort of almost like a speed bump. If you're looking at Fleetwood Mac is like ascending towards something,
Right.
this is such a retro sounding album. I mean, it
Yeah.
starts off with This Is the Rock, where Jeremy Spencer's
A
got the
50s
echo,
song.
he's got the
Yeah.
Elvis echo on his
Right.
voice.
Yes.
It's very strange because like I've said, here we are in 1970, and already this seems old.
Right. Right.
This seems old then.
Yes.
And there's others like Blood on the Floor is like an old country ballad, like in
Right.
like Hank Williams. It's a murder ballad.
Yeah.
And
This album
Spencer
stylistically,
sings,
it's all over the place. Yeah.
yeah. And then Buddy's song is like a pastiche of Buddy Holly song lyrics.
Yep.
So again, that's not, and then they cover the song Mission Bell, which is from 1960,
Right.
which was a hit for a guy named Donnie Brooks. I mean, it's a weird album, and yet I think there are some great songs on here. Probably my favorite is Station Man.
Asian Man.
Station
Yes.
Man is so
Love
good. I
Asian.
love it. Yeah,
Lost classic.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Um, Tell Me All the Things You Do is another good one. I think that was a single or it was a B-side maybe, but yeah, there are some good songs on here. Hi Ho Silver is a big Joe Turner song, which later on Foghat would cover that.
Oh, okay.
They
All right.
sped it way up.
Okay.
They sped it up. It almost sounded, their version sounds almost like Train Kept a Rolling.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
Okay.
yeah, but an interesting album, and it's the kind of thing where as a record label, I can't see them listening to it and go, "Oh yeah, this is a hit."
Oh, we got a huge hit on our hands. Yeah.
Oh yeah, rubbing their hands together.
No.
But
But there's
and
something charming about it, though.
it
Something
is very from the artwork on down, but to me, it's a step back from it's a
Right.
big step back from Then Play On,
Oh, for sure, for
and
sure.
it doesn't in any way foreshadow what was coming. So it's kind of off by itself. It's a really interesting listen.
Yeah. I like Earl Grey too.
Yeah,
Isn't that
that's an instrumental. Yeah, they did
instrumental?
some
Yeah.
at during this early 70s period, they would do some really, really good instrumentals.
Yeah, yeah,
Really good one.
it
Yeah.
out of nowhere, you're like, "Oh, this is just like an instrumental, it's just a pleasant instrumental."
Yeah.
But to your point, it's just it's pleasant and it's tuneful and it's this album is, to your point, it's stylistically everywhere, and
It,
it doesn't hold together very well.
no, it's
But
schizophrenic. It's
it has
very, yeah.
moments, it's got
Yeah.
moments. Yeah,
It's one that, going back and listening to the catalog as a whole, I can say, well, that's very interesting. But if you were waiting for the next Fleetwood Mac album,
yeah,
people
yeah.
were probably scratching their heads going, what
What is
happened to
this?
this? There's one thing for Peter Green to leave, but you still had Spencer and Kerwin in there who were writing and singing. You're like, well, this might not be so bad. But I think Spencer, well, the funny thing about Then Play On is that Spencer's got hardly any involvement with that album.
Okay, okay.
So I think this was he really asserts himself here.
Yeah, yeah,
I know he and Peter Green would butted heads, and there were times where he would kind of do his rockabilly thing, and then Peter Green would just leave the stage. So
right,
all
right.
conflict, right?
Yes.
Um,
Artistic,
but
disagreements. Yeah,
they broke up due to creative differences is
right,
usually the given line, right?
right.
So yeah, I mean, so that now we're into the 70s now, but it doesn't sound like it.
No, no, it doesn't, it doesn't.
No.
No. So I think that's a good place to stop. We're gonna keep going. We're gonna do this in sections. So this is just part one. So if Tim, if you're interested, we'll keep going with
Oh,
it.
absolutely. This is great to talk about. And, you said you didn't want the episode to be 4 hours. That's true. But also, you didn't want to do an hour-long episode and you'd have to leave so much out. So, and there's so
Yeah.
much to talk about. So,
Oh,
yeah, I'm
there's no
glad we're
way we
doing
could
it
do it
this
in an
way.
hour. There's no way.
No,
Yeah, there's no way. So
I don't have it in me. I can't
no.
edit myself that much.
Well, Tim, thank you so much for joining me again. It's always a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you, Tom.
Yep. Yep. And go check out his book, The Sound That Haunts You. I'll put links below to where you can pick this
Yeah.
up. And
All my
I'll
books are available through Amazon, wherever your home country is. And if you type in my name, they'll all come up. But yeah, you'll have it in a couple of days.
very good. You definitely want to check this book out. It's really good. And then also his YouTube channel as well. I'll put that below. So so thanks again, Tim, and we'll continue this. If you with us this long, we appreciate you. You must be a big Fleetwood Mac fan. So give us a like and subscribe. It always helps the channel. So thank you so much. And that's it. We'll see you next time on Curless Mania. Take care.